that Serena Valley doesn't have any transportation like between Cayo Cristobal, Serena Valley Boulevard. So, and we also sent you a document in the very beginning of this about identifying also parks and possible places for mixed use and stuff like that. I think you should still have a copy of that. So hopefully you're taking that into consideration as well, plus the transit.
Yes, I think one of the biggest opportunity is the Overlook Park on Cayo Cristobal, where there is the existing parking, and we are proposing a new trailhead that would connect to Los Penasquitos Canyon. So I think that's probably the biggest opportunity in the Sorrento Valley neighborhood. In terms of transit, we are looking in Sandag also of autonomous shuttles and more of the micromobility combinations to serve lower density, areas with on-demand transit. So that's all part of it, and I think that's probably the most realistic opportunity that exists.
I would agree, Alex, that that kind of transport on demand, because the Overlook Park that you're referring to really has about a dozen parking spots, I think, at most right now.
It has four.
There are four in this Overlook Park that is west of Santa Fe. There's another little Overlook Park on Cayo Cristobal that I think.
Oh, that one. Okay,
I have about a dozen.
Right.
And that's probably not enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so we'll definitely take that into consideration. And there's much more in terms of parks and urban greening and urban design. So we have different consultants working on that as we speak.
Good.
Do you know what the realistic timeline for something like an autonomous shuttle is?
I do not have the realistic timeline of autonomous shuttles. I know that they are testing, 20 miles per hour, those smaller scales in college campuses right now. And I've seen that autonomous delivery bots also are being tested on college campuses. I think we have Megan has raised her hand, and maybe she has some insight on this that we can let her speak. Do we know how to give her the opportunity? Here we go. Allowed to talk. Okay, Megan, I saw that your hand was raised.
Yeah, you know what? I'm just thinking about the Overland Park there that you guys are talking about with the 12 parking spots.
Mm-hmm.
And Gina Washington, who is the park ranger for Penasquitos, she has been up there many times working with our community, which is Tierra Mesa, the townhomes that are just west of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is some land that is owned by Tierra Alta, and they want to purchase or build homes behind our townhouses here.
Mm-hmm.
They've owned the land for, I don't know, 20 some years. And they have to figure out a way to get access. And part of that conversation with our condominium association has been building that trail out.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys may want to connect with Gina Washington, the park ranger.
Yes,
They've walked it a bunch of times, and their solution to the parking has been for people to park over at Lopez Ridge Park.
Okay. Yes. I've been working closely with Gina on all the draft trails proposals, and then Laura Ball from Parks and Recreation as well. And
yes, I think Tierra Alta is super excited to help get that path in place because it will help with their development. So you may want to connect with Tierra Alta as well. They seem to be highly motivated to make that happen as well.
Yes.
And our community is motivated to do it because why wouldn't we? It's great access to the canyon.
Yeah. Well, great to hear. Thank you, Megan.
By the way, John Leopard is the person in charge of the Tierra Alta development, so he would be
Mhm.
the one to
All
talk.
right. So moving on to land use categories. Let's try this. So some of the proposed new land uses, neighborhood commercial, which is a mix of uses serving about 3-mile radius, 0 to 44 dwelling units per acre, and then more of the traditional community commercial, which provides shopping with retail office service for the community at large, as well as limited industrial uses of moderate intensity, especially along Miramar Road. And it can range from a pedestrian-friendly commercial streets to more of the shopping centers and corridors with parking lot fronting the retail. In terms of community commercial residential permitted, it provides similar sort of use, but it allows for residential and active storefronts in addition to outdoor seating and social gathering spaces. In terms of employment land use, technology park basically allows high tech related to applied science, including R&D, corporate headquarters, light manufacturing and storage and distribution uses, sites with shared amenities, business incubators, and flexible innovation spaces are encouraged. And this is pretty much the use that's already occurring in Sorrento as of today. And then business parks, this allows office R&D, light manufacturing, but it does not permit storage and distribution uses except as accessory to the primary use. It is appropriate to apply in portions of community, primarily characterized by single and multi-tenant office development with some light industrial uses. So this has been proposed in Miramar Gateway area. And then also business parks, residential permitted, similar use, but it allows for mixed business park residential developments to create unique housing opportunities to support office, business, and other employment uses. In terms of mixed use, 4 different types of mixed use: neighborhood village, community village, urban village, and then urban employment village. I think for urban employment village is really, it's employment focused, and employment will be the primary use, but it does allow an option for residential. So developments can create unique housing opportunities that support the, tech and life science sector and other knowledge-based industries, which is the larger trend in the nation.
Alex, let me just ask about that. So, and we were having this discussion earlier at the urban employment village. My main concern is that if you're going to put housing in the industrial areas, that it supports the industrial rather than replaces it. I mean, how do you, and we go through these cycles where industrial is down and residential becomes more valuable for a time, and then the industrial is just not of interest, and then you lose the industrial land during that time period. So how do you prevent that from happening? Are there guidelines that are put into the community plan that prevent that?
Mm-hmm. So the implementing zone would be employment mixed use, and this prevents, there's a threshold of no more than 50% can be housing of the total floor area of the development. So this kind of preserves the employment oriented uses that you mentioned, Jeff.
And the other 50% are there any restrictions on those? Or they have to be industrial, light industrial? What would they be?
Well, it can be, R&D, office, lab space combination. They can add small retail to it. So I think, people can also do non-residential mixed use. So being able to add some, small restaurants, it's pretty flexible. Heavy industrial is not allowed, and then light industrial, but obviously it should be more towards clean manufacturing or clean industrial use, which is what a lot of the uses are in Sorrento as well.
Okay.
And finally, land use category for residential, there's just the one residential high. This says designation allows for a condominium or apartment buildings that typically consist of a large block of residential units with shared common space and amenities. For large blocks, pedestrian connection throughout the site and to the community are strongly encouraged. So let's get to the refined land use scenarios. Starting with open space, parks, recreation, and trails, existing and proposed. So right now, 17 miles of proposed trails is identified in yellow. These are all potential new trails. 58+ acres of proposed parks, mostly in Carroll Canyon area at the moment, and one recreation center. And restoration of Carroll Canyon and Creek as part of the redevelopment of the Carroll Canyon area. So those are some of the larger parks proposals. In terms of transit network and activity hubs, this is existing and proposed. So the gray circle is 1/4 mile buffer of potential hub of activities. In purple is existing and proposed bus lanes or bus routes. So in Carroll Canyon Road, dedicated center median bus rapid transit is proposed and planned. Skyway or aerial gondola is proposed to connect Sorrento to UCSD and the Voight station at the Midcoast trolley line. Also extension to Mira Mesa Town Center. And then finally, Sandag is proposing a high-speed commuter rail, either underground or grade separated, to connect Oceanside and I think the border with high-speed rail network. So these are some of the large transit network concepts being identified.
Alex, but
Yeah.
this, if you go back to that, if you look at Sorrento Valley Boulevard in Cali Cristobal, which is just immediately down from the northernmost perimeter of the Mira Mesa Community Planning Group area,
Mhm.
you'll see absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And that is part of the concern that those of us who live in this area and have lived here for 20 some odd years have with this plan going forward. And that is what I outlined to you in a document that was shared with you as well as others. And I really would like to see that addressed explicitly because each time it has been brought up, it gets mentioned and it disappears into the ether.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, Craig, it hasn't disappeared into ether. Like I couldn't include all the proposed mobility improvements. Just highlighting, the major ones, but autonomous shuttle or on-demand shuttle connecting Sorrento is part of the mobility improvements, but yeah, I will reemphasize your comment and letter to the mobility planners. So it is a little bit more explicit in the future presentation.
Okay, I appreciate that because that is a fairly high density area insofar as there are still almost all single family homes, not exclusively, but predominantly.
Yes. And then another concept we're looking at. Oh wait, okay, Justin, go ahead.
I think Barry also raised her hand, but I'll just weigh in real quick. Is there any plan to upgrade the bus service along Miramar Road? And why isn't that being looked at for BRT? And I don't think I've ever brought this up. It just kind of dawned on me now.
Yeah, I think so. Well, so for Mira Mesa Boulevard, Flex Lane is proposed in a rapid bus system, which, you know, is not identified here. I think for Miramar as well, I think we were looking at Flex Lane and some signal priority for transit.
Okay, so we'll screw it up. Okay.
But there will be additional mobility analysis coming up in the next, 5-6 months as well. So
Thanks.
did Barry still have her hands up, or she's good?
No, Justin covered exactly what I was going to ask.
Okay, great. And then in terms of looking at 15-minute neighborhoods concept, so nearly half of suburban trips in US is 3 miles or less. So this kind of, looks at the non-work mode share. So 90% of those 3 miles or less is by car right now. And this is an opportunity with the plan update to reshape some of the village areas or activity hubs to allow for easier and much more pleasant access to various neighborhood hubs. So this map just shows the potential 15-minute walk shed to some of these proposed change areas. Yes.
So
Go ahead.
I had asked you about this before, but this walk shed does not take into account topography or major crossings that would affect walking speed, correct?
Correct. Okay, so moving on to the actual scenario, we have 2 themes. We'll just call it scenario 3A, community centers, transit corridors, and neighborhood nodes at medium density, and then 3B at high density. So starting with scenario 3A, you can see in the blue technology park designation, and then heavy commercial along Miramar Road to the south, closest to MCS Miramar and Business Park. In moving to the northeast part, so community commercial at Mercy Road, and the neighborhood village, Camino Ruiz retail hub. And then in terms of Mira Mesa Gateway, community village at 0 to 54 dwelling units, and then a residential high of 54. And then in Mira Mesa Town Center, community village at 44 dwelling units per acre, mixed commercial residential use. And then in terms of Sorrento, urban employment village designation, slightly expanded along Mira Mesa Boulevard corridor to emphasize balancing jobs and housing imbalance, and trying to create more of the proximity to jobs and existing transit corridors and proposed transit network. So 0 to 54 dwelling units in most areas, and then 0 to 109 right at the proposed high commuter rail station that Sandag has identified. And then finally for Miramar Gateway area, Business Park with residential allowed 0 to 54 in purple, and then community commercial with residential allowed at 0 to 54, all along Miramar Road corridor, and then Business Park at 0 to 44 along Camino Ruiz and Carroll Canyon Road to provide future flexibility for innovative mix of uses. In terms of scenario 3B, medium high, same neighborhood, village, community, commercial in the northeast part of the community, but urban village designation at Mira Mesa Gateway area at 0 to 73, including residential high. And this is the original scenario 3 proposal. And then urban village in the town center at 0 to 73 dwelling units per acre. And then in terms of Sorrento Mesa, similar to the first proposal, but slight extension of urban employment village south of Mira Mesa Boulevard. And then finally for Miramar Gateway, 54, 0 to 54 for Business Park, but in certain areas 73. And then same with community commercial, 0 to 73, fronting Miramar Road, and then expansion of the business park north of Activity Road with ability for 0 to 29 dwelling units per acre. So that's the refined scenarios.
Alex, you go back to that one for just a minute.
Yeah.
I mean, Casa Mira View is 42 units per acre, which most of us think of as a pretty dense area. So you've got, I mean, am I wrong to think that these are really intense?
It really
Adding, maintaining the commercial in here is going to be, plus any parkland is going to be difficult.
Well, so I think Casa Mira View ultimately at full build out is 45 dwelling units per acre on a 7 acre or site, completely vacant. For a lot of these existing shopping centers, it's going to be more strategic infill, maybe in the corner or some of the business underutilized portion, and they will add housing that's probably 100 units. So it all comes down to design and the scale, and that's the next conversation we'll be having with the urban designers. 73 is not that high if you compare like citywide on what's being proposed, but yeah, I understand it. It does seem like it may be a little bit of too high of a density, and those are the kind of feedback that I would like to receive from the committee members.
So are you talking about that covering the entire area, or are you talking about it in little pieces of the area? So your 73 units per acre is on 3 or 4 acres instead of the whole area, or what do you really mean by that?
Well, so I mean, you can see, let's take the Mira Mesa Mall site, right? I think there's probably a dozen parcels that exist. So it would be 54, 0 to 54 for all the parcels. Yes.
I didn't understand that. What does that mean?
Yes, it's for the whole block. Yes.
So if I were to take the area of this and multiply by 54, that's the number of units you would expect?
Yes, if you are doing just a growth acreage calculation. There's a question. I live by Rite Aid off Marbury. I'd like to know why the density there is higher than in the center of Camino Ruiz. Huh. Rite Aid. Oh, where is Rite Aid?
Okay, you just
So where you see the green 73, the residential high, if you go left of that, I think, to that
Okay.
73 zone. Yeah, right there.
Yes, oh, okay, Seafood City where that is, yeah. So this is the one proposal. In our other proposal, I think it was 54 is what we had proposed. And I think one of the key points is that a lot of the existing shopping centers, the retails are not going away, and it will just be a lot more, again, strategic infill, filling certain areas. But if the shopping center is thriving and all the restaurants are full and the shops are busy, then it will not change because there are no market incentive. And all city is proposing, through this plan update is to just provide the future flexibility, if it's 15 years or 20 years from now, market shifts or society changes, and there is that opportunity to allow for mixed use. All right. So a couple other question, Alex. So I live in somewhere. Okay, so yeah, high density is a comment. Tim is saying, Alex, as Tech Park would be considered IP zoning, it typically implementation is IL or IP, but that's further discussion once we have the preferred land use to actually identify how to implement that. And would business park be less restrictive or more restrictive than IL21? So I would say, well, that's a future conversation. We need to first determine the direction on the land use, and we can start talking about zoning at that time. All right. Let's keep moving. So what are the potential impacts of these scenarios? So in terms of employment, housing, population, transit and walk accessibility, energy and water use, vehicle miles traveled, emissions and household costs. So just going quickly, high level between the two scenarios, scenario 3A, would add potential new jobs, capacity of 18,000 new jobs compared to the adopted community plan build out. And scenario 3B would be around 24,000 new jobs.
Alex, where are the new jobs coming from?
The new jobs are coming from all of the employment. So in terms of employment mixed use, that allows for additional FAR. So we would assume it's higher numbers of people working in certain parcels. Other jobs generation is from development pipelines that's either been proposed or currently under construction. And then we analyze the most likely kind of feasibility of redevelopment based on some economic factors, such as current low assess ratio. So if the structure is less valuable than the land, and also if it's a low FAR, flow area ratio, compared to the existing land, and so that's more likely to redevelop. So we have identified areas across the community for employment, growth in that way. In terms of housing, scenario 3A would provide new capacity for up to 20,000 new housing units, and then scenario 3B is 24,000. In terms of population, 34 to 40,000 between the scenarios.
So Alex, so when we did the last community plan update, we actually measured the used census data to measure the population per unit. Mm-hmm. And we came up with a 2.1 people per resident for a multifamily.
Mhm.
Your number is quite a bit less than that. I mean, that would estimate about 50,000 for your high number. Why do you think it's less?
So it's part of the methodology is looking at it's a different household rate for multifamily versus townhomes or attached units versus detached single family homes.
Right, I know.
So yeah, so those are some of the considerations. I think also the trend is towards much smaller households and smaller units. So that's part of that too. And I can send you the demographic assumptions in generating the population
Yes,
this
because-
week. Yeah. All right.
I had a question about the previous numbers. One of the stated goals of this plan is to close the gap between, the number of units and population and the number of jobs. But this only seems to take about 16,000 out of that. I don't remember what the numbers were, but how does that go in terms of closing that housing to jobs gap that you talked about earlier?
Yeah, so I'll be presenting that in the next 2 slides.
Okay.
So in terms of just comparing between recently adopted community plans, you can see Midway, Mission Valley, and Kearney Mesa. Those are the last 3 adopted community plan. And this table just shows a size of the plan area in acres, additional housing capacity added, proposed. So Midway was about 6,500 units, Mission Valley was 28,000, and Kearney Mesa was 27,000, and just showing additional units added per acre. So in terms of Mira Mesa, we're at 1.9 to 2.2 units added per acre compared to 8.8 for Mira Mesa, Mission Valley, and 6.1 for Kearney Mesa, just as a comparison. And I know Mira Mesa is not Mission Valley or Kearney Mesa or Midway, but this just provides context in what's being proposed. In terms of jobs housing ratio, this is the jobs housing balance, which is total employment divided by total housing units. So you can see the adopted community plan at build out was about 3 jobs per 1 housing. So the scenario 3A and 3B will help reduce the imbalance by 2.2 jobs per 1 housing unit, or 2.1 jobs per 1 housing unit. Recommended target range is typically 1.3 to 1.5. The 1.7, 1.5 is kind of the middle ground target that many cities use. But I think, Mira Mesa is always going to be job rich, but this gets to starting to reduce that imbalance. In terms of transit and walk accessibility, this shows the difference between an adopted plan. And in terms of potential new housing within transit priority area, scenario 3A and 3B increases by 80 to 96%. And again, a lot of the new housing capacity, employment capacity is within transit priority area. With the new jobs, 18 to 24% increase from adopted build out. In terms of walk accessibility, so residents within 15-minute walk to activity hubs, there will be an increase of 59 to 72% of people essentially living in these 15-minute walk shed, knowing that you have to wait for the crosswalk and there may be hills. And then workers within 15-minute walk to activity hubs. So that is increased from 27 to 38% compared to the adopted plan. And finally, this is difference between adopted community plan, potential per capita, average annual resource use, trip efficiency, mission, emissions and cost. So in terms of energy use per capita, there's just a slight decrease, about 0.5%. But you see a bigger decline with water use, 10 to 12% decline in water use per capita. And then for vehicle miles traveled, 10 to 13% decline in total vehicles miles traveled. And then in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, 13 to 14% decrease. And finally, auto utility costs, 7 to 9% decrease, providing a little bit more compact development, proximity to jobs, transit services, which helps with reducing car trips and emissions. And
Alex, the VMT I know is the new thing for how you evaluate the impact of the automobile, but are you going to be doing the intersection congestion analysis that we're used to in prior community plans?
Yes. So as part of our modeling, we've just started the modeling adopted plan build out with Sandag. And then once we have the preferred land use, then we'll take the preferred and then one alternative and study all of the impacts related to not just VMT, but intersections, level of services as part of the mobility analysis. But but CEQA no longer requires a level of service analysis. It's all vehicle miles traveled based now.
Yeah, that's what was concerning me, because it matters a lot to those of us who live here and drive on those roads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and maybe we need to have a deeper discussion on why VMT has been chosen by the state of California. And this was passed, I think, a while back, and it finally came into effect as part of SB 743. So this is what is required now by the state. But and when we have the mobility analysis discussion, maybe we can go in a little bit more into the SB 743 and the rationale and the evidence behind that. Discussion and next steps. So we're here April 19th, refine land use scenarios, land use 2. I would like to come back in May and refine these 2 scenarios further based on additional stakeholder input. And if this committee can choose a preferred land use, that would be fantastic. And then followed in June and August, we'll have the urban designer, landscape architect discussing refinement of some of the urban design concepts, building designs, public spaces, and then how to add more street trees and park spaces. So potentially 2 meetings, and then mobility analysis in September, followed by noise historic in October. And we'll have a kind of initial rough draft of the community plan to get the discussion going and to get input on some of the policies and goals, while we conduct the mobility modeling as well, which have just started. So that's the near-term steps, and then questions and discussions.
Alex?
Yeah.
On the next meeting, if you go back 1 slide,
Okay.
for the land use 3, will you invite the representative of Alexandria Properties to actually be available?
So I think we have Neil here, so let me allow you to speak, Neil. Hang on. Here we go. Okay, Neil, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Neil Heitman. I'm with Heck Solberg, and I'm Alexandria's local land use council. And you're going to have one, likely more reps from Alexandria attending and participating in next month's meeting as well. And we'll also be putting together a letter in support of the land use scenarios. Alexandria very much looks forward to working with the city and the group. It's got a significant portfolio in Sorrento Mesa. It's 3.5 or well over 3 million square feet, and it's growing. And there's a lot of opportunity to redevelop, tired old concrete tilt-up sites. And so they're very excited about that and look forward to working with the group.
Terrific.
Can I ask Neil just what he thinks of the residential proposals for Sorrento Mesa?
Well, there's certainly, Alexandria is not a residential developer, but they've been hearing it really. The trend has been over the last multiple years, they're hearing it from their tenants that they want more housing in close proximity to where they work. If you look at some of the other significant life science clusters in the country that San Diego's in competition with, Cambridge, the Bay Area, and so on, they're doing it. They're doing mixed use. And as Alex mentioned earlier, we're not talking about heavy industrial with lab uses and life science uses. It's very clean technology. In most instances, they don't even require an air pollution control permit because they implement closed loop systems. So Alexandria is certainly excited about the kind of expanding the toolbox, if you will, and allowing for a broader range of uses, including limited residential.
Thank you.
Thank you. So there is some questions, Q&A. Should we go to that, or does the committee want to talk first, Jeff? What do you think?
So I mean, for me, I would very much like to see what this really means. You talk about design guidelines, but we haven't seen any yet. You had drawings in the survey you put out, drawings that you've shown us before of what this would likely look like. But when you change that into 73 units per acre, covering a large acre, it becomes kind of frightening. I mean, 24,000 units, 50,000 people along Mira Mesa Boulevard, impacts on schools, impacts on traffic. I mean, we need to see what it, but it might be zero, right? I mean, you've got 0 to 24,000 as your range. So I just need to see a little better what this is likely to look like and what the constraints are on it that you're putting on it, in addition to the raw density numbers.
So I think that's really the next step in terms of looking at different building typologies, at 54 or even 44 or 73, but the range. But if the committee's direction is more of scenario, let's just say 3A, then it's mostly going to be 44 to 54 dwelling units per acre. If the preference is 3B, then yeah, it's more 73. So just as a context, Three Roots, they're multifamily. I think Garden Communities presented to the planning group last month, I believe, on their multifamily project. That's 73 dwelling units per acre. That's up to 73. So you have, it's zoned for 73. So that's a good example, I think, of really nice design with following the design guidelines, that was provided through the Carroll Canyon Master Plan, and then through the city's reviewers of the project, which was Bernie Turgeon, reviewed that project. So those are the kind of things that urban design guidelines can provide. So that's one example, but I think we can bring more examples of different building types at different density ranges at the next meeting, just to provide context. What can a 44 dwelling unit multifamily apartment or a condo look like? And there's a whole range. It could look like Casa Mirview, or it could look like something that's completely different. So we can provide that at the next meeting if that's helpful.
Alex, I think that is terribly important, because being able to visualize what it will look like will be helpful. And then I think Jeff's point about the impact on schools in particular, as well as parks, of course, is also something that we need to consider, because we may need more schools.
Yeah, so the impact on schools, San Diego Unified School District, the demographer there does that assessment analysis, but she first needs our preferred land use, to provide that information, what the needs may be. And that's part of the CEQA analysis as well, to look at the impacts to public facilities, including schools.
So Alex, if these are our choices, I mean, these choices are really not all that different. There's a little difference in density, but it's not very much. I would think you could give these to the school district and have them do both of them.
I can ask the demographer if she's willing to look at two separate, land uses. I mean, I can ask, but
And
that's.
if they won't do it, give them the most dense one and have them do that. The point is to get some impact analysis at this point of what we're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I'd like to bring up, so I know, Alex, that you said that there's not a traffic study or mobility study done at this point, but I remember taking a look at the traffic study that was done for 3 routes. And in that study, they found a number of affected and negatively affected intersections and roads, several of which were left unmitigated. And so if that is the proposed density that you're suggesting for the 3B, that raises a number of concerns of what the traffic impact is going to be if we start doing that type of development all along Mira Mesa Boulevard.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so that's, all of that will be identified through our modeling effort. And we're working with Sandag and their regional transportation model. So how they conduct that is that we provide them with the preferred land use and one alternative, and then they'll run the model and also comparing it with the adopted plan build out. And it would identify some of those examples that you were mentioning.
Is that how the 3 routes traffic study was executed?
I believe 3 routes did not use regional transportation model. I think they used some other traffic model, but I'm not sure who they worked with in terms of the mobility consultant on that. Yeah.
Okay.
Also, Stone Creek has done their modeling and mobility transportation analysis as well, which provides some good insight on potential mitigation that's required.
Okay.
All right, why don't you go ahead and take the questions from the audience, Alex?
Okay, so Forest, Greenwald, for some of these upzone to resi areas in the prime industrial area, will the CPU consider the prime industrial land uses? Yes, so we're exploring a new prime industrial category, prime flex, different tier that would be implemented as part of that. So we will not be getting rid of any prime industrial land per se, but we will be adapting the prime to reflect more of the current and future trends in office, high tech, and life science mixed use, and to support that as part of that. So we're working on that to refine and come up with the new prime industrial kind of flex zone, in addition to prime industrial land and other industrial land. That's part of the general plan. Matt Barrett, any analysis done to show a percentage of current non-resident commutes to Sorrento Mesa Valley would choose to live in these new mixed-use communities? Great question. As recommended by Jeff, we did a survey of Water Ridge Townhome residents. I think this is a year or 2 years ago, and to look at what the commute pattern was. I think the basic finding was that about 10% of people, surveyed respondents, walk to work. So that's a huge percentage of walk mode share. And I think the opportunity is really the e-bikes is a game changer in terms of being able to, easily go up a hill without sweating and, go 4 or 5 miles, no problem. But I think safe facilities for these bikes is really critical. So I think that's another alternative that will be really useful. And I mean, I see quite a lot of people biking Mira Mesa Boulevard in Mira Mesa, and it's intense right now. So, and I think a lot of folks live in Sorrento, work in Sorrento, that commute along the corridor. Patty, are you accounting for high issue along Miramar Road with the high densities across from the base? Yeah, well, here, if Patty can clarify what the height issue is, I'm going to have you speak, Patty. Okay, go ahead, Patty. Are you there, Patty?
Alex, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I was, hi, great job with all of this. I was just recalling from the Qualcomm workshop, the representatives from the base at Miramar had that they're very supportive of the mixed use. They'd love to see more housing because it supports the base. They commented that, some of their service members drive all the way from Riverside to the base because they can't find housing nearby. But having said that, there was also some caution about heights as it gets, impacts from the base and their flight zones and so forth. So that's
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and everything we're proposing is complies with the MCAS Miramar ACUS, and that is what we're going by. And also the Miramar, MCAS Miramar, the Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan. But yes, I need to follow up with Kristen about this height issue. I mean, if there is a concern of a 5-story building going up, across the north of Miramar Road, I think we need to know. So I'll follow up with her on that.
Thanks, Alex. She'll appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Alexa, what is the additional units per acre if you don't include the canyon? Let's see. Oh yeah, so take the open space out. That's a good point. I think it's like 25 to 30% of Mira Mesa is canyons and parks and institutional use. So yes, if you remove that, and just show developable acres, that the number of units would go up comparing to other community planning areas. But you would have to do that with also Mission Valley. There is a river, San Diego River that goes through it, and removing those constraints. And then Kearney Mesa also has canyons so that's additional analysis, but it's a good point that you make there. All right. I think that's it for Q&A.
Alex, I had a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
There was a question earlier, the prime industrial zone versus prime industrial overlay. So is it like Little India is in the prime industrial overlay zone versus the prime industrial land, but it's a light industrial.
Yeah, so Harkish, what is your question?
Well, I think, so we need to get removed from prime industrial overlay because there was by mistake to begin with when that was done about 20 years back.
Yes, so for certain parcels, there is critical rationale to remove prime. So yeah, I guess I should clarify.
Yeah, I think that's,
Yeah.
so we can be included part of 3B because you're showing a 3A and a 3B together. But if you look at it on the 3B, you're showing 54 units, someplace in 73. So it should be all 73 on that.
Oh, okay. So you're saying the preferences for the
73, yeah.
for Miramar Gateway. Okay.
Thanks, Alex.
Yeah. And I should clarify that for prime industrial flex, let's just say prime flex, it will be certain areas in Sorrento Mesa. And then, for commercial areas in Miramar, it probably doesn't make sense to stay in prime. So, I mean, those are all additional analysis that needs to be conducted, but after we have the preferred land use.
Okay.
All right. Yes,
Thank you.
Aaron. Okay, Aaron. Hang on. Trying to get to you. Let's see, Aaron phone. All right, I'm allowing you to talk. Go ahead, Aaron.
Thanks, Alex. Great presentation. With regards to the density, I just want to remind everybody that it really is a function of the size of the property. And so you can get large properties, like the one out east that are 44 units per acre, but you can also get really small bungalow courts, 4 or 6 plexes that go up to like 60 units an acre. And so we should necessarily just think about high density as massive towers, but we can also think of them as kind of small bungalow courts or, really small affordable units. And I think that would be exciting to see here in Mira Mesa because we don't have any of them. So thanks.
Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, I mean,
Alex, I think that emphasizes again, we need to kind of see some visualization of what we're talking about. We kind of thought we had some at the time you did that survey, and then it went back to these raw numbers, and we're not really sure what we're talking about anymore.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, so maybe we can provide the committee members with, again, different building typologies with different density ranges. Like Aaron said, bungalow courts in a smaller site could be considered, it could go up to 60 dwelling units per acre. And that's one of the most affordable in terms of building and rent.
And how do you incorporate the commercial and industrial into that also, since all of these proposals are in both commercial or industrial areas?
Well, yeah, most of the proposed changes. So let me clarify, a couple things. I mean, what these land use scenarios, first of all, does not change is single family zones and existing multifamily zones to preserve the character of the community. So, and existing affordable market rate housing stock. I just want to clarify that. In terms of places, that's proposed for change, again, it is mostly along the transit corridors and within job centers. It's much more challenging to show the different mixed use types for large shopping centers. I think we had shown some case studies, when we first started some of the mixed use, shopping centers, lifestyle centers, but we can provide more case studies before next month's meeting, or we may have to push it back to June, depending on additional feedback. But yeah, we can provide the visual examples of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, or if we could hear from the landowners how they would interpret it also, that would be very valuable.
Yes, certainly. And I think Neil said that representative from Alexandria Real Estate would be attending next meeting. So that's another good example. And I did show some case studies at the economic forum at Qualcomm of some of the mixed use life science renderings and actual projects, but maybe we can update and find more recent examples of those. Okay,
question
any
about,
other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
So regarding the employment projections, especially in the high-tech areas and tech parks, are those projections taking into account any jobs, let's say, that get refocused into the research and development district downtown? Or do any of the projections take that into account when looking at future employment patterns?
Mm-hmm. So it does not take into account, regional shift in, let's say, life science clusters. I don't foresee, because of the proximity to UCSD, Torrey Pines, Mesa, and Sorrento will, remain very strong life science locations. Also tech and other knowledge base and manufacturing, craft brew, all of that, which we preserve most of the light industrial in this proposal. So yeah, but downtown and the IQHQ, large scale mixed use life science campus, and also Horton Plaza that they're renovating right now. They're gearing towards either a tech campus or a life science campus. So yes, well, I mean, the life science industry is moving downtown, which is really changing the paradigm. And so that's, keeping up with Sorrento also, and to create a place, that's attractive to talent, is, one of the primary goals here. But in terms of employment projection, no, we don't account, for what's happening in downtown or Carlsbad, or even Poway in that regards. It's more of just, new capacity added, essentially. Yeah, we did do a market analysis earlier. Kaiser Marston, they're economic consultants. So that report is available on our online, and it kind of forecasted the employment demand and land demand for that.
Okay, yeah, I can see the life science staying in the area, but Google and Sony, sort of those high tech, I could envision, moving downtown, especially to, the new centers there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what, they're trying to do, and get some of the tech industry, large players to move to downtown. So I think that's very possible. Okay, Barry.
Yeah, you mentioned having someone from Alexandria next month to talk about business take on this. Could we get somebody from one of the malls east of Camino Ruiz, like Mira Mesa Market Center, or somebody from the Seafood City Mall?
Yeah, I can ask the representative. I think Seafood City is Mesa part. Is Brett, right? Well, let me reach out and see what do you want to hear from them, Barry, in terms of?
Well, you're proposing adding housing, of course, and I'm just curious what their take is on this. Have they seen this plan? What is their vision? Is this something that as soon as it's passed, they feel like they've got a lot of land to devote to new housing? Or do they think it's going to be status quo? Just, there's a lot of concern with that part of the plan with adding this housing to the mall areas. I'd like to hear from some of them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I can reach out to the representatives. I mean, we've been working very closely with all the major stakeholders, so they're aware, not all, and I do need to reach out further and some of the larger property owners and companies in Sorrento that they will be impacted. So that's kind of part of the ongoing outreach. But yeah, I'll reach out to Seafood City or Mesa Partners, I think, and then whoever owns Mira Mesa Market, Stockdale Capital, I want to say, but I know there's a representative that I can email. So yeah, go ahead, Justin.
So I just wanted to speak to that a little bit as a property owner, with one caveat. we're not developers or builders. And I think that's the problem. I don't want to speak on behalf of the other folks. I believe Harkey has experience in this regard, but it's a very difficult question to answer. It kind of speaks to what Jeff was talking about earlier as well. And what do they look like and how are they going to unfold? It's really a property specific answer. It depends on what the developer wants to do, depends where the demand is at the time. You know, I think that you're going to see, first of all, you have these thresholds or these restrictions, or call them opportunities based on the rezoning, where you have to have a certain amount of mixed use and retail. And you're going to be limited, even if you have 73 dwelling units per acre, you may not be able to get it on the parcel, depending on the shape, depending on geotechnical issues, water tables. There's so many unanswered questions. It really is something that unfolds over time. We know it's going to take years and years and years to replace the existing properties, because oftentimes it makes sense to keep what's there, given if it's performing or not. You may see phase development where you get subdivisions of the existing parcels and they get built in small kind of increments of, you know, maybe 15 units here and 15 units there, or 20 or 30 unit buildings by different developers. So look at Three Roots, for example, and you can see how those have been sold off to different developers and are being developed on their own with a master plan. But I don't think you can get that level of coordination across infill. So it's really going to be unfolding over time based on, you know, whoever builds something first is probably going to be the guinea pig that has to prove the concept. We don't even really know where the demand is for Miramar, for example, other than some military housing, which is probably something that could get built sooner rather than later to accommodate the MCAS's needs. But still, what does that look like? Is that naval housing? Are there subsidies? There's so many unanswered questions. I cannot answer them because I'm not a developer and not a builder, and I don't understand the costs to that degree. Generally, I do. But as you know, a lot of you have probably been hearing that the cost of lumber has skyrocketed. So I don't even think you can build these homes right now unless you build micro units. And then we have issues with impact fees. So right now, we don't know what the impact fees are. I think they're around $40,000 a unit. And if they stay at $40,000 a unit, it's not feasible to build. So there's a lot of little moving parts. It's really a complicated thing, which is why there's only a handful of successful developers here in San Diego that can make this thing work. So that's my complicated non-answer to the question.
Yeah, great point, Justin. Yeah, it's so site specific and what the market, you know, demand is, and there's so many layers. Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
It was about 6:55. Thank you, Alex. I think we should probably call this meeting to a close, and there will be a planning group meeting starting with a different Zoom link in about 5 minutes.
All right. Thank you, everyone. See you at CPG meeting.
Thank you.